Does anyone know where Erin O'Toole stands on vaccine mandates? Anyone? I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is the Candice Malcolm Show. Hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning into the program. I hope you are enjoying the Candice Malcolm Show. We are doing it every single day, so make sure that you don't miss an episode. And today I want to talk about Erin O'Toole, because it struck me the other day that I don't know where Erin O'Toole stands on vaccine mandates. I can't tell from all of his press conferences, all of his communication, everything I'm reading in the media. I have no idea whether he is for or against vaccine mandates. And I'm not saying that facetiously. I am very curious. I would like to know what his position is. The problem is he doesn't know how to communicate it. And the few times where he has sort of been clear, he's gone ahead and flip-flopped and gone back and forth on the issue. So we are seeing the same issue with Erin O'Toole that we saw during the election, which is that we don't really know where he stands because he doesn't really stand anywhere. He kind of changes his position every day, every time he's talking to the media, depending on the way that they're asking the question or whatever is in the news that day. We get a slightly different, slightly modified answer from Erin O'Toole. And because of that, it's incredibly difficult to tell what he believes in, where he stands, where his convictions lie, and what he believes in. And so today we're going to do a bit of a timetable to try to understand where Erin O'Toole stands when it comes to, in this instance, forcing members of parliament, members of his own caucus, to be vaccinated in order to go to the House of Commons, to participate in our democracy, to represent their constituents, to do the job that they have been elected to do, which is to go to the House of Commons, go to Parliament, and represent us. And so we will start this timeline on October 20th, 2021, so just a couple of weeks ago. I'm not even going to go into his answers during the campaign because we'd be here all day. Let's be frank. He's given so many different responses, oftentimes contradicting whatever he had just said a day earlier. So we'll start on October 20th, 2021, just a few weeks ago, when this is what we saw in the media. It said Conservatives say they're against a decision to make COVID-19 vaccines mandatory for MPs. So the Conservatives say they don't think it should be up to a committee of MPs to decide who can and cannot enter spaces on Parliament Hill, though the committee has historically overseen the workings of the House of Commons. And so Erin O'Toole sent out his whip, the Conservative whip, Blake Richards, to say that the Conservatives opposed the new ruling. The ruling was led by Liberals, saying that they required all MPs to be vaccinated in order to come to work, to come to Parliament. So Blake Richards, the MP, came out and said, nope. He said, while we encourage everyone who can be vaccinated to get vaccinated, we cannot agree to 7 MPs meeting in secret, deciding which of the 338 MPs just elected by Canadians can enter the House of Commons to represent their constituents. So again, October 20th, Conservatives came out and said, no, we are opposed to this rulings. Well, lo and behold, the very next day, October 21st, Erin O'Toole came out and said the opposite. So here is a Globe and Mail report. It says, O'Toole says Conservatives will respect rulings requiring MPs entering the Commons to be vaccinated. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole says his party will respect the new ruling requiring all MPs who enter the House of Commons precinct to be fully vaccinated, even though some of his MPs have objected to the policy. So Erin O'Toole was over on TVO's The Agenda with Steve Paikin, which is the publicly funded television station in Ontario. I love how having one publicly funded television station isn't enough for Ontario. We have the CBC wasting $1.2 billion a year. And on top of that, we also have TVO. So we have 2 public broadcasters in Ontario for some reason. Here is Erin O'Toole speaking to Steve Paikin, saying the exact opposite of what Conservative whip Blake Richards said the day before.
Your position may be very reasonable, but the Speaker, the Board of the Internal Economy of Parliament, has still said, tough, the O'Toole formula isn't good enough. We need everybody vaccinated. You can't say everybody in your caucus is vaccinated.
We can say that we will follow all public health guidance. So Steve, the BOIE and the Speaker have ruled, and we will respect that, of course. We also think, though, that we have to look at not dividing people on this issue. It is difficult to see places where we're seeing people terminated, where in some cases, I think if we work smart and use all tools we have, we could probably avoid these sort of confrontations with just not politicizing vaccinations.
So the speaker has ruled, and we will respect that, of course. So interesting. I heard that the caucus meeting again was very heated. That at that caucus meeting, that O'Toole sent Richards out after he didn't want to come out and say it, so he sent his whip out. I'm told that caucus meeting was very heated. That there are a large number of MPs in the Conservative caucus who oppose this kind of thing, who don't think that it should be up to, again, a small group of Liberal MPs or Liberal majority MPs to make this kind of decision, to say to Canadians, hey, you just elected a member of parliament, but they don't get to actually represent you because they haven't followed our rules and they haven't jumped through our hoops. So again, that was on October 21st that O'Toole came out and contradicted Blake Richards. Well, then the very next day, October 22nd, O'Toole came out and once again brought more confusion to the issue by changing his position once again. So here we see in the National Post. After saying Tories will respect decision on vaccine mandate for MPs, O'Toole now says it infringes on their rights. So after first saying he will respect the House of Commons Internal Management Committee ruling that MPs need to be fully vaccinated to enter Parliament on Wednesday, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole now insists the decision fringes upon members' rights. So he says this: while we respect the Board of Internal Economy, or BOIE, has the jurisdiction to manage the parliamentary precinct, we do not accept that the BOIE has a jurisdiction to infringe on a member's right to take their seat in the House of Commons. That came by way of Erin O'Toole's spokesperson, who said that in a statement on Friday. So on Wednesday, Blake Richards came out and said, nope, we're not going to follow this. On Thursday, Erin O'Toole came out and said, yep, we are going to follow it. And then on Friday, O'Toole sent a spokesperson out to say, actually, it infringes upon their rights. And so what does that even mean? Where does he stand? Does anybody know? Well, the following week, October 27th, 2021, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole says MPs who enter the Commons will be vaccinated. This comes to us from the Globe and Mail. Here it says, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole said Wednesday that members of his party who enter the House of Commons once Parliament resumes will be vaccinated against COVID-19, but he declined to say how many Conservative MPs have not yet received their shots. Mr. O'Toole told reporters that during a meeting earlier in the day with his caucus, he had put forward a plan for a return to legislative business. Conservative MPs, he said, had agreed to respect and abide by new rules, which will require parliamentarians attending the House of Commons to be vaccinated. However, Mr. O'Toole said the Conservatives will formally challenge those rules. Is anyone else out there confused? A little bit confusing, but I think he's saying that he will challenge the rules, but that the rules in place will be followed, so that he is requiring all of his caucus to be vaccinated in order to show up to work on the House of Commons. So again, that came on October 27th. Well, on November 4th, we heard from the rest of caucus, or at least some members of caucus, who simply are not happy with the way that Erin O'Toole is handling this issue, the way he's communicating with them. I don't blame him because, like I said, it is very confusing, not trying to be facetious here, but it is very hard to understand where Erin O'Toole stands. You have to sort of parse through his language. You have to try to understand the spin, cut through the spin to get to the point when he's speaking on this issue. And even then, there's so many mixed messages and so many contradictions and so many flip-flops that at any given moment, it is hard to tell. Well, dozens of Conservative MPs decided to do something on their own, and that is that they created a caucus. Caucus describes a couple of things here. Caucus is the entire group of Conservative MPs. They form the Conservative caucus, but then within that group, there's often little smaller groups that focus on specific issues. So there might be a pro-life caucus, or a pro-gun caucus, or a lower taxes caucus, or whatever. There's many of them. And so in this instance, a couple of Conservative MPs, well, up to 30 Conservative MPs, banded together to form a caucus to defend the rights of unvaccinated Canadians. They're calling it the Civil Liberties Caucus. So here we have from True North, up to 30 Conservative MPs have banded together to form the Civil Liberties Caucus to speak up for unvaccinated Canadians who are losing their jobs. According to MP Marilyn Gladue, the caucus was organized in October after the party had its first caucus meeting since the election. Conservative MPs were concerned about constituents who had lost their jobs after refusing to get a COVID-19 shot for various reasons. And so again, this group banded together to speak for those constituents, speak for those Canadians who feel morally opposed, or perhaps they have a medical reason why they don't want to get vaccinated and they're being treated incredibly unfairly. We've seen this so much. It's actually sort of scary when you look at it, the way that unvaccinated Canadians are spoken about, the way that they're scapegoated by politicians. You often hear politicians like Justin Trudeau blaming the entire pandemic or blaming deaths or blaming the reason that we're still stuck with all these various rules and lockdowns and mask mandates and all this stuff. He'll just blame it on the unvaccinated, completely scapegoating them, pitting Canadians against each other. It's really obscene. And we talked about this on the show a couple of months ago, but there was that Toronto Star front page where it literally said, I don't care if they die. Those people can die. And just some of the most divisive, ugly things that Canadians can say about their fellow Canadians, highlighted and emphasized and sort of promoted and celebrated on the front pages of the Toronto Star. Really despicable. So it's good to see Conservative MPs picking up this issue and understanding that just because you don't want to get vaccinated doesn't mean that you're not human, doesn't mean that you're no longer a person or a Canadian with rights and freedoms. And so good for them to speak out on this issue. However, interesting because it does go against what their own leader has to say. So we are seeing some fractions in the Tory caucus, in the broader caucus, and some problems for Erin O'Toole with his leadership, because clearly, we don't know who these 30 MPs are. They haven't released a list. We don't know which MPs are part of this caucus, other than the fact that Marilyn Gladue is sort of the organizer and the leader of this group. But up to 30, that's a big deal, because as we know, the Conservative caucus can spark a leadership review of Erin O'Toole with fewer than 30 signatures. So O'Toole could be in pretty big trouble. So we learned about this new caucus on November 4th. Then on November 5th, we hear from Erin O'Toole. He asks MPs to keep quiet on hot-button political issues. This was over in Global News. 2 MPs suggested the message from Erin O'Toole's office was the party's message comes from them, the OLO, which is the Opposition Leader's Office, which is Erin O'Toole's office. The OLO keeps on putting out messages to caucus saying, please don't respond to media inquiries on X, Y, and Z, and then complete silence. Please do not respond and direct all media inquiries to the OLO, said one Conservative MP who agreed to discuss the matter on the condition of not being named. The MP said it was not the first time O'Toole's office has tried to prevent the Conservative caucus from commenting on political issues publicly. Caucus number 1 doesn't know what OLO is going to say. Number 2, OLO doesn't say anything, and we're all supposed to play the game of no one moves, no one gets hurt. So I suppose I'm not the only one out there who is a little confused by the communication from Erin O'Toole's office, because this Conservative MP says, number 1, we don't know what they're going to say. Every day seems to be a slightly different message, and you never know what you're going to say. And apparently they're running quite a sort of centralized office over there. They don't want any Conservative MPs talking to the media unless it is Erin O'Toole. So pretty interesting stuff. Again, we're seeing lots of hints of trouble and fractions over in the Tory caucus under Erin O'Toole's leadership. Now, I want to move on to Marilyn Gladue, focus a little bit more on what she said. She made some comments on CTV that have become pretty controversial. I think they're completely blown out of proportion. I actually think that what Marilyn Gladue said about polio is correct. There's a little bit of context missing in her statement, so I'm going to go through that in a bit more details. But first, if you enjoy the Candice Malcolm Show, if you like what we do here at True North, please consider heading on over to tnc.news/donate. Leave us a modest donation. We really appreciate everything that we get. And if you are so inclined, you want to donate $10 a month, you can join our True North Insiders Club. You get lots of perks. You get private discussions with True North journalists, including myself and Andrew Lawton. Lots of perks over there at tnc.news/donate for our insiders. If you're watching this video on YouTube right now, I'm going to ask that you please like this video, subscribe to True North. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss an episode, and hit that little notification bell so that you get an update every time we post a new video. If you're watching over on Facebook, don't forget to like this video, share it, leave us a comment, and head on over and like the True North page. And finally, if you're listening to the show in podcast form over on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts, don't forget to subscribe to the Candice Malcolm Show, and please consider leaving us a 5-star review. It really helps us out when it comes to the discoverability of the show. So getting back to Marilyn Gladue here. So she's becoming a little bit of a thorn in the side of Erin O'Toole. On November 5th, after creating her new caucus, her Civil Liberties Caucus, Gladue said that she has the support of Erin O'Toole, that Erin O'Toole likes the idea of having a caucus of MPs and senators to examine the issues around COVID-19. So this comes to us from the Globe and Mail. It says the Sarnia-Lambton MP said today she has been in touch with the Office of Conservative Leader about her idea, which has come to involve about 30 MPs, in which she says will become the Civil Liberties Caucus. So again, on November 5th, Gladue says that she has support of Erin O'Toole, but then she goes on to CTV, she goes on with Evan Solomon, and she has this interview, which really, we'll play the interview, and I'm going to walk through how this gets widely distorted and turned into this whole idea that Marilyn Gladue is anti-science and that she's an anti-vaxxer. That's not what she says. So this is a clip that's being used by the Liberals, the liberal legacy media, by the left, to claim that all conservatives are anti-science, and to claim in particular that Marilyn Gladue is an anti-vaxxer, anti-science, and that there's an anti-vaxxer splinter group within the Conservative Party that she is the lead. So let's play this clip, because I think that this clip is really getting taken out of context, and that Marilyn Gladue is a smear job, a total smear job against her. What she's saying in here is correct. Let's play this clip.
You say, where does it stop? Like, did you have a problem when the school system is asking if our kids have got their polio vaccination?
Well, I think, in terms of the risk, people that got polio, many of them died and many of them were crippled. And that is not the same frequency of risk that we see with COVID-19, although COVID-19 has killed people, as you rightly pointed out.
It's what?
And so what I think we need to do is
COVID
make
has
sure
killed.
we have...
I just have to be clear. You're saying that COVID's not as bad as polio? Like, COVID has killed significantly more people in a shorter time than polio did in Canada. I'm not trying to compare tragedies, but the medical, I'm just trying, I know you're an engineer.
I'm just receiving the information from medical experts that talk about the relative risk. I'm not a doctor myself. So,
but they're saying, the president of the Canadian Medical Association has said mandatory vaccinations work. Every medical association, the Public Health Agency of Canada, are saying these mandatory vaccinations are working. If you're listening to the data, wouldn't you support making sure everybody's vaccinated?
Well, I think there's multiple sources of data out there, and that's part of the work of this caucus, is to take a look at all of the different data, sort through it, and come to what the reasonable solutions are to ensure that everyone is safe and everyone's freedoms are protected.
Let's just walk through this clip, because again, I feel like Marilyn Gladue is being a victim of a smear job here, and that everyone is taking this clip out of context. The context of this conversation, the conversation that we are having in the country right now, where we're at with vaccines, is we're talking about little kids getting vaccinated, age 5 to 12. Everybody older than that has already been available to get vaccinated. It's already been available to them, and they've made the choice whether they're getting vaccinated or not. The newest wave that we're hearing is about children age 5 to 12. So that's what the conversation is about. That's what Evan's talking about. He says, you're okay with kids getting vaccinated against polio. Why aren't you okay with them getting vaccinated against COVID? Then she says that polio kills and cripples people. What I think that she meant, or what she should have said, is that polio affects kids, because again, the conversation is about kids, but she didn't say kids, she said people. And then Evan picked up on that and said, wait a minute, COVID has killed way more people than polio, which is correct. Obviously, COVID has killed many scores more time than polio. However, the conversation is about little kids. And when it comes to little kids, the risk of polio is much greater than the risk of COVID. So at the height of polio, sure, it killed a couple thousand people in Canada, but the case mortality rate among children, which again, we're talking about children here, the case mortality rate with children for polio is somewhere between 2 and 5%. Between 2 and 5% of kids who get polio die from it. About 1 in 200 cases of polio, the child gets permanently paralyzed from. Okay, so we're talking about a case mortality rate of 2 to 5%. Whereas when it comes to COVID, we talked about this on the program many times 2 weeks ago, last week as well, that the case mortality rate when it comes to kids and COVID, remember that little kids are the most likely group to get COVID. They're the largest group that have gotten COVID in Canada, some 350,000 cases reported already of kids with COVID, whereas the number of kids who have died from COVID, and this isn't even in the 5 to 12 range, this is anyone under the age of 20, so 19 and under, there have been 17 deaths in Canada, not 1,700 deaths, 17 deaths, which from my calculation, the case mortality rate for little kids with COVID is 0.002%. So again, orders of magnitude of difference between a 2 to 5% death rate, which is the case with polio, versus a 0.002% with COVID. So if Marilyn Gladu is specifically talking about little kids with COVID, then she is 100% correct. And the entire argument in the media that she's anti-science, anti-vax for saying this is completely wrong, and they're taking her out of context. Now, if she was simply talking about the entire population and she thinks that COVID is not as deadly than polio, then she is mistaken. However, I believe that they were talking about children here, and I think that, again, everyone out there calling her an anti-vaxxer and anti-science is just mean-spirited and taking what she is saying out of context, and that is what we're seeing. So now everyone is using this interview against Erin O'Toole to sort of say, look at these crazy people in your caucus. And so here we have the next day, November 8th, Erin O'Toole criticizes the comments by the Tory MP on COVID-19 vaccines, saying not appropriate. So, of course, Erin O'Toole is getting slammed. He held a press conference on Monday in Ottawa, and the media, being the media, hounded him over and over and over again with questions about Marilyn Gladu. You can see in some of these questions, it's just so ridiculous. The groupthink mentality in the media, their cancel culture at its finest. This is their mentality. They go out, they call her anti-science. They say that she should be kicked out of caucus. They're questioning Erin O'Toole, peppering him with questions. So here we have a little montage of the pack mentality, the pack creatures over in the parliamentary press gallery, asking Erin O'Toole the same question over and over and over again, which is basically accusing MP Marilyn Gladu of being anti-science, saying that she should be kicked out of caucus, saying that she's spreading misinformation, and just doing the whole woke cancel culture thing. Of course, the problem is that Erin O'Toole gives mushy answers. He doesn't have a strong answer. Instead of trying to defend Marilyn Gladu and maybe saying, look, she was talking about kids, she wasn't talking about everything, he just completely throws her under the bus, says that her comments were not appropriate, doesn't try to clarify the situation, doesn't come to her aid at all, just throws her under the bus, says that she's wrong, but then can't really answer the question, can't really provide a straight answer. So here is what that looks like.
In talking about is there not a risk, though, if you have a mini caucus that is going to be advocating against vaccine mandates, that there will be discussion in that group where there could be anti-science sentiments, there could be messages that run contrary to public health messaging? Just yesterday, it seems that Ms. Gladu was calling into question the severity of COVID-19 versus polio. So why are you allowing your MPs to form this caucus when there seems to be a risk it could create added confusion to your message of go get vaccinated?
Well, as I just said, it's important for members of parliament to advocate for their constituents who may be losing a job or may need reasonable accommodation. We do that all the time on a range of issues. But it's very different to cause confusion with respect to the health and well-being of Canadians. Ms. Gladu's interview did that yesterday, and it's not appropriate at a time we should be answering questions about vaccine hesitancy, not creating new questions.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Mr. O'Toole, you just said that comments by Ms. Gladu and Ms. Lewis create confusion and so hesitancy. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to take any action against them? Are they still welcome to stay in your caucus? Are you going to talk to them, or are you going to kick them out?
Well, as you know, Glenn, we have conversations as a caucus, as we had before the return of Parliament, to confirm that all of our MPs and senators that participate on the 22nd and come here to do their job on behalf of Canadians will be vaccinated. We will continue, as we have, to support all public health measures and to encourage Canadians to learn more if they have any hesitation. Our team will address instances where people are causing more questions and perhaps adding to hesitancy, as opposed to advocating for their constituents and concerns about the border and other things.
Althea Raj, the Toronto Star. Are you still opposed to vaccine mandates?
As you know, I think vaccines are critical, and I encourage as many people to get vaccinated as possible. In fact, what I suggested with respect to the federal government approach for federal employees, Mr. Trudeau has misled people about, including transportation. If you look and see what's happening in terms of some accommodations, you're seeing that happening in the Federal Civil Service exactly as how I predicted. But Mr. Trudeau, including today, will continue to mislead people and divide rather than try and say, let's get hesitancy down as much as possible. And we're going to be proposing some ideas on that. And let's, where we can, have some reasonable accommodations.
And look, Erin O'Toole hasn't been clear. It's not clear what he believes in. It's not clear where his position is. He sort of just gives lots and lots of mushy answers. And of course, the problem with giving mushy answers, with being inconsistent, with flip-flopping, with sort of just no one knows where you stand, the problem with all that is that it gives your opposition the opportunity to blast you, to point it out, to jump on this and just say your position is unclear. And of course, when it comes to the Liberals, of course, they're going to mock Conservatives. Of course, they're going to accuse them of being anti-science, of being anti-vaccine and anti-vaccine mandates. So now you have Justin Trudeau sort of doing a victory lap. So instead of Justin Trudeau being asked tough questions about his own record, about his total recklessness when it comes to spending and managing and the total economic mess that we're in right now, instead of talking about that, this gives Justin Trudeau the opportunity to pivot, turn it back to say, look at those scary Conservatives, look at how bad they are. So here is Justin Trudeau mocking Erin O'Toole for being so weak on this issue.
And to my mind, I mean, I look at this crew here. I look at all of you, dedicated to your communities, dedicated to serving, dedicated to keeping people safe. I can't imagine any of you putting up your hand and saying, well, I deserve special treatment because I'm an MP. I deserve not to need to get vaccinated because I'm an MP and you should be making exceptions for us. I can't imagine any of you ever even occurring to you to say that, but that's exactly what Conservatives are saying.
So there you go. Justin Trudeau wins today. He gets to dunk on Erin O'Toole. Instead of Justin Trudeau being held accountable by the media and the opposition, here we have the leader of the opposition being held accountable by the Prime Minister and the media. It's a sick joke. As a Conservative, you can never give the legacy media and Justin Trudeau the opportunity to turn the tables because they always will. They'll do it every time. They never want to talk about Liberal flaws. They only ever want to talk about Conservative flaws, and Erin O'Toole is making things very easy for them. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show.